History. It's filled with triumphs, tragedies, and moments that make you wonder, how in the world did that happen? Today, we dive into some of the strangest, most bizarre, and utterly unbelievable events in history that will have you scratching your head and saying, "No way." Number 1. Let's start with something truly unbelievable. It's 1518 in the town of Strasbourg, and suddenly, people start dancing. And I mean dancing like they've just discovered rhythm for the first time. But it's not just a few people. No, it's hundreds, men, women, children, dancing uncontrollably in the streets. They didn't stop for hours, days, weeks even. Some danced so much they collapsed from exhaustion. Others, they just dropped dead. You might think, okay, what's going on here? Was it some sort of impromptu street party? Well, let me tell you, this was no fun fest. Historians still argue about what caused this bizarre event. Was it mass hysteria? Or perhaps a contaminated batch of bread? Some theorize that the dancers were poisoned by a mold that grew on wet rye, causing hallucinations and fits. The truth? Well, it's still up for debate. But one thing's for sure, dancing wasn't the kind of epidemic you want spreading through your town. Number 2, next up, the Great Emu War. Yes, you heard that right. The Great Emu War. Now, we all know about wars between countries, but this one, well, it was a battle between the Australian government and emus. Yes, the bird. In 1932, emus, those giant flightless birds, started invading farmland in Western Australia, wreaking havoc on crops. Farmers were furious. And what do you do when you're furious? Well, you declare war, obviously. The Australian government sent in soldiers with machine guns, thinking they'd just mow down these birds. But the emus, they had different plans. The soldiers, armed to the teeth, found that the emus were fast and nimble, outrunning the soldiers' bullets. And when they did manage to hit one, the emus just kept running. The end result? The birds won. I repeat, the birds won the war. Australia's most embarrassing military defeat, and probably the most hilarious one too. Number 3. Now, let's jump into the mind of a king, a very peculiar king. Meet King Charles VI of France. His reign began in 1380, and things were going fine until they weren't. One day, Charles had an epiphany. He believed he was made of glass. Yes, glass. He was terrified of shattering, like some sort of fragile ornament. So naturally, he wore armor to protect himself from breaking. But it didn't stop there. Charles also ordered that his court members act like glassmakers and treated him with the utmost care, as if he was a delicate, expensive piece of crystal. Who's going to tell the king that he's, well, not made of glass? This glass delusion lasted for years and led to some seriously strange behavior. Imagine trying to keep a straight face in court when the king is asking if you can make him a special glass wardrobe. Weird, right? Number 4. Now, let's step into the eerie and unsettling world of medieval Rome for a bizarre event that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about politics. In 897 AD, Pope Stephen VI, Pope Stephen, decided to do something that we can only describe as truly horrifying. He put a dead pope on trial. Yes, you heard me right. Pope Formosus, his predecessor, had passed away. But that didn't stop Stephen. He had the corpse of Pope Formosus exhumed, dressed in papal robes, and propped up on a throne. Then he tried him in court. Formosus was charged with perjury and various other offenses, despite the fact that he was dead. The whole thing was a bizarre spectacle, and when the corpse was found guilty, it was stripped of its papacy, thrown into the Tiber River, and that was the end of that. A literal dead pope was sentenced to the most absurd trial in history. Can you imagine that courtroom drama? Number 5. Okay, we're getting into some seriously strange territory here, but brace yourself for this one. It's January 15th, 1919 in Boston. Imagine this. A 50-foot-tall tank of molasses, yes, molasses, explodes. The syrupy explosion sent a tidal wave of sticky molasses flowing through the streets of Boston at 35 miles per hour. The flood destroyed buildings, killed 21 people, and injured 150 others. And no, this isn't the plot of a horror movie. Molasses, usually harmless, became a slow-moving but powerful force of nature. And though it's been over a century since the Great Molasses Flood, the cleanup was so challenging that locals would joke they could still smell the molasses in the air for years afterward. Who knew syrup could cause such chaos? These bizarre events remind us that history isn't always what it seems. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. From dancing epidemics to wars against birds, to dead popes being tried in court, the past is filled with stories that defy all logic. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, there are even more out there waiting to be uncovered. So, the next time you're sitting in history class, remember, the truth can be weirder than anything you could ever imagine. If you enjoyed these mind-boggling tales, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next journey into history's most unbelievable stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss what we've got in store next. Thanks for watching, and until then, keep questioning everything.